What's up YouTube, and welcome back to another video. And today I'm going to be discussing, does Kong deserve title king in the Monsterverse? And in this video I'm going to be just breaking down little highlights from Kong's adventure and what he went through in life, and all the way up from birth of Kong all the way up to Godzilla's Kong New Empire. Starting off from birth of Kong, Kong was born in the middle of a war between his kind and the Skullcrawlers, and unfortunately, Kong has been on his own ever since because his parents died and all his tribe got wiped out, and he's been alone ever since, and he's been fighting battles and he's been growing ever since his parents passed away. He's just been on his own on Skull Island, and Hank Marlowe did mention that Kong is the god of this island, and if Kong is on an island, then who's gonna stop the Skullcrawlers from growing? And, Kong is the only answer to stop the Skullcrawlers from growing from Skull Island. And the big one showed up, and Kong fight the big one and really had a tough battle, and Kong did manage to have a little help from the humans, but managed to still win the battle between the big one. Kong has been on his own for such a long time on Skull Island, but until the Skull Island anime, he was with an Iwi girl. They both were close friends, and unfortunately she managed to die off to the Kraken, and Kong was really pissed off, and Kong was like, I'm gonna get my revenge on this Kraken, I'm really want to kill this Kraken. And yeah, that brutal fight between the Kraken and Kong went off, but Kong didn't want to leave off the island, but the dog was able to lure Kong off the island to fight the Kraken, and yeah, that's how the Kraken and Kong managed to fight off. And that fight was really good, really good. Honestly, he's just been surviving on his own. He's just been on his own for a really long time, even leading up to the events of Godzilla versus Kong. He's been on his own, and he also did save Gia off the island, and he also did fight the Spirit Tiger. He did fight Kamazots, and those were pretty good fights too. And Kong has just been he's just managed to all he just want to do is just find his home. He's just trying to find a place where he wanted to be ever since he got taken off Skull Island. And now since Nathan Lane wanted to go down to Hollow Earth, he wanted to lure Kong down there, and ever since Kong was down to Hollow Earth, he really loved the place. And he was discovering stuff until he was witnessing wars, and he found that handprint under the cave. And then when he was in that lair, he was able to sit down on this throne. And ever since the Hollow Earth, there was just so much more to explore down in the Hollow Earth. We saw new creatures, and we was able to explore the Warbat, which Kong had a hard time fighting. Ever since GVK, Kong really had so much potential down in Hollow Earth, because I really wanted more Hollow Earth in the upcoming movie, which is GXK New Empire, which we was able to get. And I was saying yeah, this is definitely Kong's new home. He's definitely gonna love the Hollow Earth to death. He really is gonna love it. And then now here comes Godzilla's Kong New Empire. But we're gonna take a little step back to after the events of Godzilla vs. Kong, which is Kong Survivor Instinct, which I did play the game. It was a pretty fun game, indie game. It was pretty good game, pretty solid first Monsterverse game for console. But honestly, it was definitely Kong focused. It was so cool to see him fight Tiamat, and he really didn't get too much screen time on him fighting Abaddon. Really not a lot, less than 15-second fight. I was expecting more to see those two fight, but he wasn't in the Hollow Earth. But Kong was on the surface, and Godzilla wasn't in the game, so I was like, wait a minute, why is Kong on the surface if Godzilla and Kong wanted to separate from each other? He's you stay on your side of this world, and I stay on the top of the surface. You know how it is. But honestly, Kong Survivor's Instinct, it was still evolving into the Monsterverse. Still adding more lore, but for some reason I kind of wish Godzilla was featured, but 7 Levels didn't have the rights to Godzilla, so they had to do just Kong. So GSK the Hunted, we did get to see Kong fight Titan Hunter. Kong didn't really had a hard time with that one. It was an easy fight, honestly. But honestly, GSK the Hunted was honestly more of a Godzilla comic, because he was more focused on Godzilla, so Kong really didn't have too much to do in GSK the Hunted because he was in the Hollow Earth. But now leading up to Godzilla's Kong New Empire, which is definitely a Kong Century movie right there. So much explaining. This one, definitely Kong had really good treatment in Godzilla's Kong the New Empire. Kong was able to explore the Hollow Earth a little bit. Kong got his metal tooth, and then he was managed to run into Zuko and other apes, and Kong's been alone for this whole time. So when Kong saw Zuko, you could just see the shock on his face, because he was like, wait a minute, that's another ape, a baby ape. But now the fun adventure with Zuko and Kong, like I really had a good time. That was really one of the best parts of the movie, Kong and Zuko's adventure, until Zuko lured Kong to Scar King's lair. So you really saw the shock on Kong's face when he saw other apes down in the Hollow Earth, and you just see them being slaved, and Kong was so heated until he managed to see Scar King, which Kong was not phased. And then Kong and Scar King fought it out until Kong obviously won that fight after being held in the chokehold by Scar King's whip. And then after that, Scar King was able to whip out Shimo, and then Shimo uses her frostbite blast against Kong, and then that's how Kong managed to get frostbite on his arm, hurting real bad. And that's how Kong was able to receive the Beast Glove from Trapper, from his good technique ideas. And then, Kong needed Godzilla's help. They fought, and then Mothra stepped in, telling Godzilla that Kong really needs your help to stop Scar King and Shimo. And then that's how those two was able to team up in Rio. And way before Rio, the Hollow Earth battle happened, which was a really good sequence. And then, after the defeat of Scar King, Zuko, Shimo, and Kong went back to Scar King's lair. And now Kong is honestly at this point, now he has his own tribe back. He's not alone. He has family now. Here's the question right here. After that ending of Godzilla x Kong's New Empire, does Kong really deserve title king? Absolutely. I really think he definitely deserves title king, but unfortunately, Legendary still don't have the rights to give Monsterverse Kong the title king, because due to, Universal owning the rights to King Kong. So, they didn't really afford the rights. So that's why, Kong is still named Kong instead of King Kong. But, I really think Monsterverse Kong definitely deserves title king. Really does. But yeah, let me know down in the comments below if Kong really deserves title king in the Monsterverse. I know that was a whole lot of in-depth right there. I was not expecting it to be that long, but I really had a good time discussing if, Kong really does deserve title king. He really does deserve it, and I ain't gonna lie, he really does. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.